but as far as competitor, I don't think, at least in the time that I played there, I haven't seen anybody compete as hard as Kobe. I think he was
Mm.
the ultimate competitor. I mean, he was just incredibly how much effort he put into every game. I really admire that. Even though I played with and against some of the amazing competitors, but he was way above everybody.
Welcome to Champion This with Brianna, Salvatore, Dueck, and Chelsea Poppens, where we share the incredible stories of athletes and entertainers who are using their platforms to create positive change in the world and the communities they live in.
Today we have Bostjan Nachbar on the podcast, who is a total powerhouse. He's a former Slovenian professional basketball player, playing in the NBA, Euroleague, and he played for the Slovenian national team. He played for several NBA teams, including the Houston Rockets, New Orleans Hornets, and the New Jersey Nets. After his NBA tenure, he returned to Europe, where he played for several top clubs across the Euroleague, such as Spanish ACB and the Italian Lega Basket teams. Now, jumping into his next play, he is the managing director of the Euroleague Players Association, ELPA, which he also helped to launch in 2018. Just for a little bit of context, for our listeners, the Euroleague Players Association represents the players' unified voice in regards to Euroleague basketball and assists their members in achieving their goals on and off the court. Bostjan also has been a Unicef ambassador, championing change across the globe, and also has been very involved in hosting kids' clinics and camps for many years. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
To kick off, we kind of want to start by diving into your journey with sports. You have an incredible resume. You've done a lot of amazing things. And we just kind of want to get a feel for how basketball became such a huge piece of your story and when you kind of fell in love with it.
It's a fairly young age. I grew up in a very small town in Slovenia. Less than 3,000 people, and it didn't really have any organized basketball apart from a team in an elementary school that I played on. Um, but my dad was involved in basketball. He played semi-pro back in the 70s, 80s. Was on the court every day playing street ball with his friends, and that's how I started to basically get involved and started to like basketball, even though I played a bunch of different sports. From soccer to tennis to skiing in the winter because we had a lot of snow. Volleyball, handball. Like at one point, I had like three,
Wow.
four, five sports that I played every day of the week. But I always kind of knew
Love
that
it.
basketball was going to be the thing. So yeah. So by the time I turned 10, 11, I was only focused on basketball. I was lucky that I grew up in an environment where the sports was just everywhere, and it was like
Mm-hmm.
you always every afternoon you did something. If nothing else, you were on your bike going around from friend's house to friend's house, and the older I got, and yeah, the more I got involved in basketball. So by the time I was 12, 13, and then 14, it was really already like a hard focus on basketball, everyday practices and things like that. But yeah, just being a tall kid in an environment that offered a lot of sports, and that's how I started. So I
Yeah.
always say I was really lucky with the childhood I had and how it
Mhm.
all evolved.
Did you have
So
any
cool.
siblings that pushed you into like the basketball direction, or that you're like, I want to beat them up, or were your parents super supportive?
Yeah, I have a younger brother, so he he looked up to me because I was older, and he was in basketball as well, and he's a successful coach now. But my parents were really supportive. Yeah, they saw the passion I had and the love I had for the
Mm-hmm.
game early on. I really had this tunnel vision, like a very strong focus to play basketball and to really succeed in basketball. Even the chances were limited or small, knowing where I
Yeah.
come from. But yeah, the support was there, so that helped me. And then of course hard work and being in the right place, at the right time, avoiding injuries, having some talent, I guess. It
Yeah.
all you guys know how it works. It all contributes at the end of the day.
It's
Mhm.
true. Was basketball big in Slovenia when you were growing up? Was it like
It's always, yeah, it's always been really big. It has a a rich basketball history. I mean, Slovenia was a part of Yugoslavia. So after, since the Second World War and then all up until basically the early 90s, it was one big country,
Hmm.
Yugoslavia. And Yugoslavia, being country made out of republics, Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia, Macedonia, Montenegro. So like, this whole area has a very rich sports culture, not just in basketball. It's so many different team or individual sports. It's really, we talk about it so many times. If Yugoslavia stayed together as one country, like it would be really dominating European sports. The fact that it kind of broke down into these smaller republics kind of took that away. Even though you still have a strong Slovenian team in many sports, Serbia, as you guys know, it's always up there, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, sports has always been big, and basketball has always been very popular, and especially in the 80s when I was growing up, the late 80s, early 90s. I think it took another step because we saw the first players from Yugoslavia make it to the NBA. Dražen Petrovic, Toni Kukoc,
Mm.
Tino Raja, Vlade Divac on the Lakers. Those are the guys that were our idols that we watched growing up as kids. And then
Yeah.
once they made it to NBA and they played against guys like, Michael Jordan and the rest in the 90s, then we were like, okay, so we can get there.
Yeah.
That's the path. And I think that opened up the world to all of us.
Yep. Were you a
Mhm.
part of an academy system, or like in the US, for example, most kids who play high level basketball, you play on your high school team, but then you also are part of an AAU club team in the summer. What was that experience like for you? And it sounds like it was pretty intense, from
Yeah.
age 12 on. So yeah.
I mean, in Europe, you don't have really highly organized elementary, middle, high school basketball. There's some leagues, but not really, not really the high level. Same as with universities. They have some teams, but it's not really. Nobody goes to university for basketball. In Europe, you have club basketball. So club is separated from the school. That's a separate entity that is like, every town or almost every town has a basketball club or a volleyball club or whatever, and that's where you go to play. And yeah, I mean the competition even in Slovenia back in the 90s when I was growing up, basketball wise was really tough. It's a super small country, but coaching and the level of talent was at a really really high level. So growing up in the 90s in that environment I always say it was like ideal to continue to improve because whether it was under 12, under 14, under 16, under 18 league, they were all tough competitions that brought the best out of you, and we were so lucky to have that. And so yeah, the competition was very stiff, but it made us better players. But yeah, the system is much different than what you see in the USA, and I think there's a lot of conversation to be had on the differences of how kids or young players are being taught basketball in Europe compared to the USA.
Mhm. Yeah, you really talk about the system being different. How old were you when you first turned pro, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, and that's the big difference, right? So you don't have really university basketball in Europe, and if you're talented and if you show promise, um, then a professional club will pick you up, and will have you join their pro team. So yeah, the first time I played a pro league, a Slovenian league in a pro league, I was 15. So in the 15 years old,
15.
I played the
Wow.
first game. I played the first game against grown-up men in a hostile
Making
environment
the
with crazy
money? No.
things. I mean, when you're a kid, it's all about getting opportunities. I think people in the states hear, oh, he turned pro at 15 and see dollars and all that. It's not really like that. I mean, you're happy if you get your housing taken care of and some lunch money, so to say. It's about
Hmm.
opportunities. And yeah, like I said before, that the environment we had in the 90s was perfect for that. A lot of young players got a lot of opportunity to play early on against men, and
Mhm.
yeah, that really shows you what real basketball is. And then you have to basically stand up for yourself, and if you want to make it, and a lot of kids don't, of course. So
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things like they throw you in the water and you got to swim.
You got to figure it out. What was that
Mhm.
first
Yeah.
year like for you? 15 going against these grown men. Were you already 6'9" at that point too, by the way?
I was close to 6'9", 6'9". I was still growing. I grew up until I was maybe 17 years old, so I wasn't
Okay.
but I was really skinny. I was still skinny when I made it to the NBA. I was still a skinny guy. So, um, but yeah, I mean, I think the biggest wake up call for me when I joined the pro team wasn't actually playing with 15, because when I started playing in the middle of the season, so I didn't start the season with the pro team. I got called up middle of the season, so played a few games and saw that experience, and that went by fast. But then the next season, I started with that team in training camp. And I remember the biggest wake up call was we were outside running sprints in a stadium, doing like
PTSD from this.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, doing like laps on the stadium, like a 400-meter lap. And I remember being super motivated. So I was in the group with 5, 6 other veteran players, and as guards forwards. And the first day we just started running, and I just go off, like I go in front of everybody, thinking like I'm gonna show how fast I am, how good I am, show
Yeah.
the coach. And basically, I made the first lap. This was the first exercise. We run the first lap. I made it through, and the other guys come behind me, and the captain of the team comes up to me, and he told me, he's like, "You finish first again, I'm personally going to kill you." That's why he said that was the message. He's like, "I'm going to kill you," because of course the older guys didn't want to see a young kid getting
Yeah.
those laps in front of them. So that was the wake up call. I was like, okay, I gotta adjust to these guys, because they're
Yeah.
gonna beat the crap
You
out
can't
of me if
bruise
I
their
don't.
ego too fast.
Yes.
That's literally what he told me. He said, "I'm going to kill you myself." And I was like, wow.
Don't show us how slow we are.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
That's wild. Well, to jump ahead a little bit, so you were playing first professionally in Europe, and you were there for about how many years?
So I was there for playing professionally for about 6 seasons or so. So
6 seasons.
yeah,
Okay.
4 of them in
Before
Slovenia, and then 2 of them in Italy,
in
in
Italy.
Benetton. Yeah,
Got
yeah.
it. And then to fast forward, you were picked 15th in the 2002 NBA draft, selected by the Houston Rockets. I can only imagine what this moment was like for you, childhood dream coming true.
Mhm.
But I'd love to hear in your words, what was that moment like? Walking on stage, shaking the commissioner's hand, and really realizing your dream come true.
Yeah, it's definitely an awesome moment. It's unforgettable. You see these clips from other players walking up on the stage, and then one day you're there. But it doesn't happen without what happened in the past, and opportunities you get, and the chances you take. Um, Playing in Italy the year before, and having the luck to have Mike D'Antoni as my coach, because people don't know, many people don't know, he was a coach in Italy before he was the head coach in the NBA. And having him giving me opportunity and telling me that I can play in the NBA was huge for me. So then finally getting drafted, and shaking late David Stern's hand was an unforgettable moment. But I think soon you realize that make it to the NBA is actually easier than to stay in the NBA, because once you get into training camp, the reality hits. Guys are fighting for the spots, and they don't give rookies any opportunities. They don't want to give them. So you got to fight for every second to stay on the court. And yeah, I always say, and you guys know, it's easier to make it to the league than to stay in the league. Talent is just incredible. It's been growing every year. The amount of
Mhm.
kids that can play at that level is nowadays just crazy.
I don't think people fully realize how stressful. For me, training camp was pretty stressful because you can get cut any single day and you
Hmm.
don't know if it's going to be today, tomorrow, the last day, the first day, or how much opportunity or how much time you're going to have to get picked up by another team. What was that like for you? Were you stressed? Were you riding on nerves the entire time?
Yeah, I honestly, like, looking back, my first training camp, like, I had no idea how well or not well I was doing. Like, I thought I did really well, knowing that I was a skinny kid from Europe. I needed to adjust to the NBA game, faster, stronger,
Hit the weight
um,
room.
hit the
Yeah.
weight room. I understood all that, but I still thought I played well. I did well in training camp. I did well in the preseason. I got to play, I think, first 2 games of the regular season. I think both of them as a starter, if I'm not mistaken. And then on my team, there was Glenn Rice was my team, so a former NBA great, and he was injured for the first couple of games. So when he came back, I was like going straight to the end of the bench, and that was
Mhm.
the reality check. Like, oh, that's how it works. So I'm here until those guys get healthy. Once the guys, big names, get healthy, I got put on bench. So the first year was a difficult year because I didn't get to play a lot, and it was a tough year. But season by season, I got to play more, and I think I also improved as a player year by year.
Hmm. Because in addition to playing with the Houston Rockets, you also played for the Hornets and the Nets. Like what were those years like? What was the learning curve in order to play at that level? How would you compare it to the EuroLeague?
Yeah, much different for sure. NBA has a completely different. NBA teams have a completely different approach than European clubs do. NBA teams are, if you're not in the in win now mentality, or if the team does not realize that they have a team to win now, then they develop players. Then they, are willing even to, have a bad season in order to draft higher and to get in some talent to help them improve. So there were different stages. Like with Houston Rockets, like we started my second year, and then in the beginning of my third year, like we had a team to start really not just making it to the playoffs, but go far in the playoffs. So it was a different type of team that was kind of growing together with Yao Ming and Tracy McGrady, and we tried.
Nice.
There was a
Yes.
team that
What a
was kind of
squad.
developing
Yeah.
up and coming team. Then I got traded to the Hornets, which was a trade that I actually wanted and asked for, and I got the wish to go to a team that is actually a developing team where I could play more, and I did. So I was in a completely different situation on a team that won, I think, 18 games that year that I played with, that I got into in the middle of the season. So it was a bad team, but great to get a lot of minutes and to play.
Yeah.
And then the last team, or the third team I played on with the Nets, was again a completely different situation because it was a complete win now team with Jason Kidd, Vince Carter, Richard Jefferson, and those
Mm.
guys. That was a complete win now team, and we made the playoffs when I was there, and it was a lot was expected to us, even though we did not realistically have enough talent to win championship. But we were there, we were in the mix, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
different situations, and then you have to adjust to them. In EuroLeague, it's all about winning. Rarely you will see a team that will have the guts to really give a young kid a chance to develop and to play.
Hmm.
Rarely. All 18 teams in the league are trying to win, except for maybe one or two who are, giving young players a little bit more of a chance to play. Otherwise, it's all about win, win, win. Huge pressure, fan pressure, owner pressure, media pressure.
Hmm.
Everybody wants to win, and everybody
Yeah.
goes into the season thinking that they can win.
Yep.
And it's a very competitive league, and you really have always maybe not 18, but at least 10 teams who realistically can win in any single season. So it's different. It's in my opinion a lot more pressure and much harder to play in Europe in EuroLeague than it is in the NBA from that standpoint.
Hmm.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because they have
Wow.
to win so many games in order to stay in the EuroLeague, don't they?
That's also some teams have to stay to win, also in domestic leagues. But that's kind of changing. Now you have more and more teams who have a so-called license or a license that can stay in your league no matter what the result is. So the league is also trying to stabilize more from from that standpoint. But that doesn't change the fact that everybody still wants to win. And you lose two, three games in a row. Coach is nervous as hell. The owner comes in the locker room, talks about losing.
Brutal. Yeah.
Hmm.
Fans almost boo you, depending where you are, don't support you as much anymore. Whereas in the NBA, if you have a losing season, of course there's negatives, there's disappointments, but hey, there's draft, there's rebuild, there's trades possible. You have none of that in Europe. So
You
with
don't
the
get
team
that
you have,
country pride.
yeah, 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 yeah. So with the team you have in EuroLeague, like that's the team you have to win with, and
Yeah.
there's not much you can really change during the season.
Hmm.
Totally. That's so interesting. I didn't, when I played pro in Switzerland, I wasn't on a EuroLeague team, but I do very distinctly remember we had lost a game in like overtime at the buzzer.
Was it
And
to us? No,
no, it was
I'm
Aro.
kidding.
Remember Aro? Yeah, Chelsea and
Yeah.
I played against each other in Switzerland. This
Okay.
team we lose to at the buzzer, and the presidents like sat me down for like an hour and a half and were like, "Why did you lose the game for us?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? I dropped 20 points. I have, however many assists, and they're great people, Marie and Sean Rose. But yeah, it just was so different, like
Hmm.
It
that
is.
kind
It
of
is.
experience and like that." pressure is just very different from college.
I mean,
But yeah.
I think that, NBA compared to EuroLeague, I mean, people in Europe see NBA as this big entertainment thing, which it is, right? It is sports and entertainment, or in some cases, even maybe entertainment first and then sports.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still competitive, very competitive players in the league. There's competitive coaches, there's competitive front offices. Um, so, people in Europe maybe don't see the right picture. They say, hey, it's only playoff basketball in the NBA is real basketball. I don't necessarily totally agree with that, but I will say that in Europe, especially in EuroLeague, which has a slogan that says every game matters. I think it's on point because it really does. I mean, even teams that are maybe outside of the playoff picture, for them, it's still huge pride to win against a city rival or against a team from another country that has, that they have a long history with, et cetera, et
Mm-hmm.
cetera. And so you can always find an opponent that the game against them matters. And if not for you, it'll matter for fans. And if not for fans, it's going to matter for a president of the team or an owner of the team and somebody that's going to apply pressure on
Mm-hmm.
players. So there's a lot of that as well. But that comes with the territory. And as a player, you know that, and you go into that knowing that that's a part of the game.
Mm-hmm. It's also just like a little more fuel to the fire, which is it's really nice to experience too. But bringing it back to the NBA, like obviously you're playing against a lot of like these big greats, but who would you say is the biggest competitor that you faced in the NBA, or like your biggest arch rival, maybe?
Um, I mean, rival, not. I mean, when I was, when I played with the Rockets, the rivals were like Dallas and San Antonio. That was like the big Texas thing, right? But
Mm-hmm.
they had better teams than we did when I played there, and but I could kind of feel that. But later on with the Nets, like the big rivalry we had at that time was either the Knicks, the city rival, even though we beat them every time, I feel, and I still have great memories of beating Knicks in the Madison Square Garden. I think these are like one of my favorite moments. Um, or playing against the Raptors because Vince
Mm-hmm.
Carter just got traded to the Nets just before I arrived there, and that was the big rivalry because both were solid teams, and I felt that was a nice rivalry we had at that time. And you kind of want that. I think sometimes that's a little bit missing in the NBA. You want to have these stories and histories, not just Lakers and Bulls or or Lakers or Celtics or these historic teams, but also some new teams that are, I think, need that rivalries because those rivalries really make stories at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Do you have a point of view on who was the top player in the league when you were in the NBA, or who you like hated playing against?
I never really have I never really like I didn't like playing against Peja Stojakovic, if you guys remember him
Yeah.
from the, in general I didn't like playing the Kings because the Kings had this style of play where it was just like a free style of play, a lot of pass and go with amazing passers, whether it was Mike Bibby or Vlade Divac or Chris Webber, like all of them just great passers, and then shooters. And Peja
Mm.
Stojakovic was like the most difficult for me to guard because he was constantly cutting and he was an amazing shooter, and I could never guard him. It really was like giving me nightmares. But as far as competitor, I don't think, at least in the time that I played there, I haven't seen anybody compete as hard as Kobe. I think he was
Mm.
the ultimate competitor. I mean, he was just incredibly how much effort he put into every game. I really admire that. Even though I played with and against some of the amazing competitors, but he was way above everybody in that
Yeah.
sense.
Did
Mm-hmm.
you have any moments where he talked a little trash to you all, or like
No,
anything that sticks
no,
out?
didn't.
No,
No, but we
just
played
his
we
game
played
speaks for
playoff
itself.
series. Yeah, we played playoff series against them, and we were guarding each other. And I think that those were some nice moments that scoring against Kobe or trying to guard Kobe, not guarding
Yeah.
Kobe, trying to guard. There's a difference. But no, I didn't. I was not much of a trash talker, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I avoided those situations. I never really enjoyed them. Maybe in practice more when you were fighting for position and spot on the team and things like that. But on
Yeah.
on the court, I was never really into that. No, but I actually thought he was quite respectful to everybody. He was just a huge competitor.
Yeah.
Kobe, I mean,
We love
no,
that.
that's
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. I'm curious also of all the teams that you played with and some of your teammates, were there any like playing with Jason Kidd, for example, or T Mac? Like, what was that like? And also, like different leadership styles? Like, was there anything that helped you to really kind of anyone that you saw that brought out the best in a team, or just kind of honestly, it's just interesting to hear more about the backstory. So, would love to hear your
Yeah, I
experiences.
mean that's an awesome question because you really do have different kind of superstars and they're different kind of leaders. You know, with Tracy McGrady once he came to the Rockets in that trade for Steve Francis and Mobley and those guys. Um, I was there with him for I think half a season before I got traded, and I don't think I spoke to him once, to be honest. You know, I just a very, at least to some of us on the team, very close guy. And you know, when we were in a group, sure, maybe he said some things and we laughed about things, but I don't think I ever had a conversation with him. You know, which I didn't like. You know, as a leader, I think you're supposed to involve
Engage.
everybody and
Yeah.
engage the conversations and trying to bring the best out of everybody. I mean, amazing player. I'm not even going to get into that. But as far as communicator, I didn't think he was good at that.
Mm.
Then going to the Hornets and being there for Chris Paul's rookie year, that was great. You know, you could see the leadership that he brings immediately as a young kid already. Um, and basically the team gave him the keys and he ran the team incredibly well. And I could tell already early on that he's going to be special just because of his leadership
Yeah.
abilities.
Mm.
Forget the rest, him being an excellent player, but you could see that he is the leader.
Mm.
And then going to the Nets, Jason Kidd, a fairly quiet, introverted guy, to be honest, but at the same time, you kind of felt um, appreciated would be the word,
Mm.
because he knew what your abilities are and he was able to maximize them. Like me being more of a quick, guy that loved to run in the fast break, guy that was a good spot up shooter. Like he brought the best out of me and would tell me things on the court that I could look for me to be more successful and how he would find me. So, I was not hanging out with him after games, going to dinners or, whatever. But on the court, we had a great communication. I think his
Yeah.
leadership style was probably one of the best I've seen. Didn't say much, but when he said, you listen.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm.
You got to love those too, because those people, because I don't think what people realize at the professional level, you don't have to be best friends with everybody. Like they
Exactly.
are your teammates. Each person brings a different skill set to the team, and they're vital in their own way. But also, just like for you to have a leader who's able to shape every single person that steps on that team and understand like who they are without hanging out afterwards, like that's actually incredibly impressive, because they have that IQ, they have that insight, and they can kind of like gauge where that person's at and help you develop, but also help the team come together and build that chemistry.
100%.
um
100%. I mean,
yeah.
definitely. And that's why Jason was so amazing as a player. I think not just that, but I think that was a part of his leadership style was that, like I said before, like you felt appreciated, like the confidence he gave you just by you got to feel that he trusts you. Because when
Hmm.
he
Mm-hmm.
told you, hey, on the next play, make sure you go there instead of there. And then when you did that, you actually got the ball open to shoot and you made it. He came to you and told you, hey, good shot. Like that's all I
Yeah.
needed. I didn't need to have,
Incredible.
dinners or spending time with him in the hotel room and talking life or something like this. That's all I
Yeah.
needed from
You
him.
didn't
And
need
I
the
got it.
emotional support.
Exactly. Like it
uh,
was enough. It was enough, and that's I think how he also got respect from a lot of guys on the team because he really knew
Mm-hmm.
how to run things and how to help
Mm-hmm.
the players, and it gave you a huge amount of confidence when you see that he trusts you to tell you to do things, and then he actually delivers the ball to you in these situations because he
Yes.
believes that you can do something for the team in those situations,
Yeah.
and that's why he was great. Even though I have to say I did not expect him to be a great coach, just because he was kind of quiet in the locker room generally,
Mm-hmm.
but
mhm.
he's doing well, and I'm happy for him.
Yeah.
I think he's doing well in Dallas. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
How important would you say, because you're in those high stakes pressure situations where your teammates have to trust you, like how important would you say is your mindset to that success and the success of your team?
I think it's hugely important, but that's something that doesn't come overnight. I think chemistries in the team, they get built over time. It's easier when you get added to a team that already has a core, like it happened when I joined the Nets. So that was maybe a little bit easier. But you still have to prove yourself And once the opportunity comes, you got to take advantage of it. The teams that are trying to win, they don't give you too many chances. Players don't give you too many chances like your teammates. They want to see right away, can you help out? Can you contribute? If not, you kind of see it and you kind of sense it. And I mean, besides coach not giving you minutes, I think even when you're on the court, players don't deliver the ball to you. So yeah, in that sense, I think that's important to understand, and that's why it took me a couple of seasons to start realizing that. I
Yeah.
wasn't ready to understand all that as a rookie at all. I
Yeah.
think it takes some maturity to be able to do
Hmm.
that.
For sure. Following your time in the NBA, you did go back to Europe and you finished out your professional career playing in the EuroLeague. That's correct? Yeah.
Yeah, in your league.
How many years post NBA were you continuing to play in Europe professionally?
I played 10 more seasons after I came
10
back.
more seasons.
Yeah,
Wow.
9 or 10 seasons. I think it was 10 seasons in total that I played. So I retired when I was 30, yeah, going to third on 38, which was a long career, and
It's a long
I could
career
still play,
starting
to
at
be honest.
15.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
How did your
And I
body
think
feel, more importantly?
no, I actually felt good. I had an injury in my last year when I played here in Spain. I had a calf injury in the second part of the season that was kind of dragging out, and I didn't finish the season on the court, which kind of bothered me at the time because I kind of knew that I will most likely retire. But that was an injury that I could fix, and I did fix over the summer. It was just a question whether I'm still motivated enough to get back on the court at
Hmm.
38 and continue to play. And I kind of genuinely, honestly ask myself, like, do I still want to do that, or while I'm still really healthy, want to call it quits and do other things in my life? And I decided to stop playing, and I think it was the right decision. I don't regret it at all. I think there's a moment that you have to admit yourself that it's probably a time to do something different that motivates you more than basketball, and
Yeah.
that's what it was. And for me, it was family, it was some other project that I engaged with, and including the Player Association, and that's where I
Mm.
saw or yeah, that's where I saw my passion going, and
Mm.
I think it was the correct decision.
So
I
cool.
I feel that too because you reach a point where you're like, I've been doing this for I
Yeah.
didn't play as long as you. My career wasn't as long as you, but you do reach a point where you're like, what is the next chapter? What's gonna challenge me? What's
Hmm.
gonna fill that cup and like kind of like light me on fire again? Because like you've reached your dream. You've done it for so long and you're an athlete, you're a competitor, and you're constantly competing against yourself probably more than anybody else, and so it's like what is your potential, what is the glass ceiling, what are you capable of, and so like I relate
Yeah,
to that.
it's and I think it's also, for me, it was also like looking back at my career and then looking at the ending and saying, you know what, I've been extremely lucky that I can actually finish on my own terms, right? So
Hmm.
Yeah.
it's not like I couldn't play anymore. It's not like I wouldn't
Yeah.
get another offer to, play in a domestic league somewhere, maybe not EuroLeague, but a domestic league. It wasn't an injury that suddenly ended my career, that I couldn't, run, jump anymore. It was none of that. It was actually me going out on my own terms. And I think the athletes that can
Yeah.
do that are actually the luckiest one, in my opinion. And I'm
Hmm.
Yeah.
fortunate enough that I was one of them.
That's amazing. Yeah. I think for me too, like when I came to a point where I was ready to transition to my next play, my next thing, finding something that I was so passionate about really helped. Because I think one thing that is scary when you give up your sport is you invest so much time, you love the sport so much. Like, are you ever going to find something that like fuels you in the same way? And I think
Hmm.
being able
Hmm.
to be like, no, like God made me with purpose. What else do I love? What else am I passionate about? For me, it's still sports and impact, but like, it was off the court and being able to still like cultivate that passion just in my next play, I think really
Yeah, and
helped.
I think, and a big part of what we do now is in Player Association is trying to is explaining to players exactly that. Like, you have to start planning ahead and trying to find what the next passion for you, because the professional sports will end one day. I'm not telling anything new here, but
Mm,
for a lot of players, it's still something that they continue to push aside and push aside and push aside. I've been like this all up until maybe 33, 34 years of age, when I started to really start thinking about, okay, I have to probably start planning for later. Like, I can't just continue to brush this aside. that's why I said earlier that I was lucky enough to prepare first and then to go out on my own terms. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
athletes don't have that. They don't prepare, and then overnight, basically, their career is over. And these are some of the
Mm,
stories that you listen to that are hard stories. Um, and I think that's why it's so important to understand this is a professional athlete. Like the basketball, in my case, is not everything. It might be everything for a period of your life, but generally speaking, it's not everything. There's so much more to it, and you need to be
yeah,
ready for whatever else life brings.
Mm-hmm.
100%.
So you officially retired in 2017, and then you pivoted, and then you became a scout for the Pistons, right? Okay. What was
I was doing some scouting for the Pistons. Even though I was never officially, let's say, hired as a scout for Pistons. Like I was actually, I had
you
some
were a spy?
colleagues in, yeah, and I had colleagues in Detroit who were actually was the former front of some people from the former front office of the Nets. So I was lucky enough that once I finished my career, I was still in touch with people who were, working in front office, and I kind of was just like, hey, can I pick your brain? Can I come by? Can I learn about the business and things like that? And they were lucky enough, or they were um, kind enough to let me do that. And then they said, hey, why don't you, since you're in Europe, tell us about this player and that player and this and that. So I did kind of like an informal scouting. I was never really actually traveling as a Piston scout to games and watch
Hmm.
players,
Yeah,
but it helped me to learn more about that part of the business, and I could kind of see what I like and what I don't like in front office basketball. So I
for
kind of
sure.
realized scouting is not for me. I don't enjoy watching too many basketball games. I
Mm-hmm.
don't
Yeah.
enjoy evaluating others. Um, but I do like the business of basketball, and that's why when the opportunity to start the Players Association came by, I kind of felt that that's where I want to go into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you talk to us about that a little bit more? So, 2018 is when you
Mhm.
really spearheaded the launching of the EuroLeague Players Association, which is, in a sense, the equivalent of the MBPA for the EuroLeague, correct?
Correct.
Awesome.
Correct.
Okay, so what made you decide to start the ELPA? Yeah, and what was that process like?
I mean, it wasn't just me. It was the whole generation of players that was basically asking to have an organization that can collectively represent players in the best league in Europe, right? They saw how what the things that NDPA achieved. They many of them or many of us played in the NBA as well, so we had experience of working with or being represented by NDPA and things they can do to offer players and we started talking and yeah, the desire was definitely there. The question was, how do we do that? Because EuroLeague is a league that is basically composed out of clubs from 9, 10, 11 different countries, depending on the year.
Yeah.
So that's
And
that's
it
where it was more
changes, right?
difficult,
Year over
and
year.
it
So it's
changes,
not,
and it
yeah.
changes, yeah. And you have different languages, different cultures, and stuff like that. So it took me about a year to travel from team to team and talk to players and trying to get everybody on the same page. And then once we collectively decided we'll do that, we formalized things and established the Players Association, started negotiating the first collective agreement. And then COVID hit in 2020, and that's put everything on the side, on the shelf for a year. But we reached the first collective agreement in 2021, which is actually the first international sports league in Europe that has a collective agreement between leagues and the players.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
we did something not just when I say we, I mean the generation of players
Hmm.
that played at that time, and some of them still play. Like they made the step. I was just basically doing things that players were asking me to do. But
Hmm.
this is a generation of players that finally did that because for decades before, players never really had any kind of collective representation in the best league in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not an easy process. It was a lot of arguing. I wouldn't say fighting, but arguing and convincing the clubs and going against some of the principles they had and trying to change things. Um, but we made it. I think the players collectively have so much power. They still don't fully realize it, I think, and I didn't realize it as a player. But if
Hmm.
all the guys in any given league step together, the power is just huge. And then players have started to realize that in Europe or in EuroLeague more precisely, and that's why I think we were able to make that step, and we just signed the second agreement a couple of weeks ago. So the first collective agreement expired, and we just signed the second one, which actually
Amazing.
also includes
Congratulations.
Thank you. It also includes the first commitment from the league and the clubs to start developing pension for players because players in Europe never had
Wow.
pension before. So
Hmm.
we're doing steps that are, I think, amazing for players, and more is to come. Yeah.
Hmm. How well? Obviously, like we're all professional players, but we all hear stories from different players of their experiences in different countries. How important is it to for these players to have a voice and be heard and respected? But like, what specifically did you see as while you were playing in the EuroLeague that was lacking or missing that kind of led to like the push to have this collective?
I think that just the unknown when you go from club to club, like how this club is organized and what standards does it have. I mean, yeah, you sign your contract and you could be super happy with the financial part of the contract, but then almost it ends at that point. Like you don't know how the coach is going to be. You don't know how the GM is going to be. What are going to be the
Hmm.
rules? What are going to be the travels like? How's the medical team?
Hmm.
Is team paying on time? And so on and so back and so forth. So what we did with ELPA is standardized all these things. So first of all, elevated the standards and then made it the same across the league. So same rules for all the teams when it comes to medical staff, when it comes to overdue payables, when it comes to second medical opinion, the travel standards, the length of preseason, practice rules,
Hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. A long list of things. So we standardized that. So no matter if you go from Spain to Greece to Lithuania to Serbia, the EuroLeague club has to basically offer you the same standards. Sure, there's differences, and there's differences in the NBA as well, but these differences are really extremely small at this point.
Yeah.
And that was the focus for the first 3 years that we had on is trying to elevate the standards and make it the
Yep.
same across the league, and we achieved that.
That's amazing. And you just said about 3 weeks ago you passed the latest iteration of a collective bargaining agreement.
Mhm.
What have been some of the new changes that you've added to this CBA in addition to the pension plan? Or is that kind of like the hallmark feature of this new
I
CBA?
mean, that was one of the things that was important for us to get this commitment that we start working on analyzing and developing the pension because pension is something that is not easy to do when you're talking about a league across 10 countries, as I said before. So there's a lot of work that has to be put in, but we needed a commitment from the league that they're also on board when it comes to starting developing that. So that was a
Definitely.
big thing. But I think on a lot of different in a lot of different areas we added just elevating standards, whether it was medicals, like upgraded standards as far as the medical facilities of the teams. We upgraded the travel conditions for players. Upgraded some of the contractual or more legal things that are important to players. Of course, the league had some demands on the other hand to change some things as well. But I think overall, we made a huge progress in actually offering players even better working conditions that they had before. Because I think that the details and day-to-day things are the ones that players notice the most.
Hmm.
And for players, it's super important to have a very clear and very understood and very professional contract in place that you security, not just for yourself, but for your family as well that is living with you. So these are
Yeah.
the things that we try to cover so players can really feel comfortable and knowing that the money is going to come on time and that the medicals,
Hmm.
standards of the club are as high as possible. Things like that. Some of the things are
Yep.
boring. Sometimes I'm listening to our lawyers and I'm like, man, I have to go to these meetings talking about these
But it's
things, but but it's necessary. But
yeah.
that's how these contracts are being put together. But I think the most important thing is that little by little players are getting more and more. I'd like to say power because power sounds like we're trying to take away power from the league and the
Hmm.
clubs, but they're getting more recognition as a collective. And I
Yep.
think that the more the league and the clubs understand that together we can build a better product, the better it is. And I think we're getting there.
Hmm.
The players on one side and clubs in the league on the other, year by year, also through the collective agreement, is becoming more of a partnership. And that's how we
Yeah.
want. We want all of us to be basically in the same boat and trying to build league into the best possible
Hmm.
league it can be because it brings the best things for the players as well. The
Hmm.
more the league grows, the more the salaries grow, the more the standards grow, et cetera, et cetera. And
Yeah.
that's where we're at.
There truly is power in partnership, and a lot of the things that you talked about are the things that are overlooked or people don't even think about,
Hmm.
like until they experience them. Especially as athletes,
Exactly.
there's a lot of athletes that go from the U.S. to playing overseas, and they're like, "Well, it's different. It's different standards of things, different," and they don't always feel as supported. So it's amazing that you guys are doing that for athletes to help create that partnership and build it better than it was before. But
Yeah,
also,
it's
yeah.
very needed as well. Sorry, yeah, but it was
No,
very needed as well. I think that it was long overdue, but I'm happy that finally things are moving in this direction. Yeah.
I love it. But on top of that, you're also involved in community initiatives and giving back to the next generation with all of your free time of hoopers. And one of these initiatives is called Basketball is Life, in which you use basketball to connect school kids with disabilities, school children with disabilities to basketball. What kind of impact have you seen through that work? And can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, that was a project we started a while ago, I mean, and it really took off in back in Slovenia. Because we kind of first of all we started to the way we did things is that during the basketball camp that me and my friends run in Slovenia now for already I think it was 18th year this year. What we did was we connected with local centers that work with people with disabilities to come to our camp, and one practice out of the time that we have the basketball camp in the summer was dedicated to play basketball together, right? To have
Mm,
our kids at the basketball camp include people with disabilities and learn more about disabilities and learn about the things they go through their life and see the other way, the people also live, that have these their families and et cetera, that have these unfortunate situations. And we kind of noticed early on, which again wasn't something new that we discovered, like basketball really connects, right? So putting
yep.
people in this environment was like, first it was like, you could see the distance with the kids and they didn't feel comfortable. Then as the time went on, you could see high fives going on and
Yeah.
hugs and conversations developing. And then we said, so why don't we actually make this a year-round thing where we actually start connecting the centers that work with people with disabilities with schools that have basketball
Mm,
programs. And that's what basically Life is Basketball was, that actually started to have when kids had the sports education class in schools. They would occasionally do it together with people with disabilities, with kids with disabilities, and the common theme was basketball.
yeah.
And that's the project that actually took off, not just then locally, but also across different cities in Slovenia. And it was funny because at a later stage, schools started doing the same thing on their own. So even without our help, which was great because we never tried to like patent what we did. It was more about trying to do something for the community. So it was good to
Yeah.
see that it actually started to the sport started to connect people, and schools started doing it on their own. And I think we're all of us who started it, we're really proud to see that it kind of just took off, and
Mm,
they didn't need our help anymore in that sense.
Hmm.
that's huge. We had a Paralympian named Matt Scott on our podcast a
I
few
saw that.
episodes
Yeah.
ago.
Hmm.
Incredible, like two-time gold Olympic medalist or a Paralympic medalist, and I think he won a bronze. But he has an incredible nonprofit called Fly Without Limits, and it's wild because when you look at the numbers behind disability inclusion in sport, it's like something like 60% of people with disabilities don't think sport is for them. And I think
Hmm.
there's so much stigmatization against people with disabilities. And sports are such a freaking awesome way to just be like, listen,
Incredible.
this is for you. Let's all come out. Let's like be a community and do this thing together. And yeah, I think that's so cool to hear more about that work. We
Hmm.
definitely love that.
Yeah, it is like this. I mean, like I said before, we didn't discover anything new in that sense, but just gave people the opportunity to connect through
Yep.
basketball, and that's what it was. I mean, I still remember the first time we did that. Like, myself and my colleagues, my coaches, we looked at each other like we barely did anything. We just put them in this setting, and it took off. The
Yep.
sharing the ball and sharing the pass or a layup or a score. Like it
Yeah.
just developed naturally. And that's
Yeah.
what you just need to do. It's just about you got to start the match. And I think in these kind
Yeah.
of situations and these kind of projects, it really goes by itself as long as you have the right people that actually really want to do that without expecting anything in return. And that's what it's all
Yep.
about. It's about doing something for somebody else.
For sure, 100%. And it's crazy to just if you have actually played wheelchair basketball as an example, my goodness, this sport is freaking hard.
Yeah, I tried. I tried. I tried. It is hard.
It's
It is
really
hard.
hard.
It's much harder than the basketball we played. I mean,
Yeah,
that's for sure. I mean,
for sure.
but yeah, we tried it and we had kids try it and it was fun. I mean, so
Yeah,
because
super fun.
also me growing up, you would also see the people with disabilities or people in wheelchairs like it was so stigmatized. Like you could never really connect it with sports, but actually learning more about it and then putting kids from our camp in these situations like it's just incredible how it connects and how it actually
Mm,
shows kids there's more to life than just looking at people in a wheelchair in a certain way. Like there's so
yeah.
much more. And yeah, I mean the best thing I got out of it is actually see the friendships develop from this. People who
Mm,
actually could stay in touch after our projects because of that project. I think that was the best thing.
we
Mm.
love it. That's awesome. So, next question I'm going to ask you is also continuing on this theme of you being a champion for impact. Would love to talk about your time as a UNICEF ambassador. So, you have participated in 2 UNICEF missions to Africa, one in Chad and one in Guinea, to aid in conflict resolution as well as disaster relief. What were these experiences like for you?
Yeah, just life changing. To be honest, when we did these two campaigns, and then I came back to Slovenia, and people would ask, for the experiences and the things that you did there or you changed there. And I always say, hey, one person can, you can't go to one of those, disaster zones for a week and expect you're gonna just change people's lives. What we try to do is bring awareness back to Europe, back to Slovenia in this case, and show the people the situations and the stress that these people live in. But I was really selfish, especially with my friends, and I can say that openly now. Like selfish in the sense that I said I kind of feel that this was for me because it changes your life when you see these situations. It's one thing when you see it on your social media on TV and you know it's far away and you don't really
Mhm.
care. But once you actually live that and you're in that environment and you actually put yourself in the shoes of people who live there, you actually change as a person because it really shows you the other side of life, so to say. The situations that we've encountered there, and I really prefer not to go into details that we've seen, but some of these situations that you see there are you see some of the most courageous people you can ever imagine. We can talk about basketball or about any other thing and athletes and courage and all that, but when it comes to these situations that you see in those crisis zones is nothing compared to basketball or to sports or to anything we do in life. So that's what I got most of it out of is really to see the other side of how life also looks like. And I think it changes you in a person. You see things from a completely different perspective.
Mhm. Mhm. I
Yeah.
think those type of experiences like are really eye-opening, and it is, like you said, very important to step outside of your experience in order to see things from a different perspective.
Definitely.
Um,
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And I think that, the two missions that we did, I know I was told by people that I worked with, like it was extremely successful. So that was good to hear. Like the awareness campaigns that we were involved with were extremely successful. And I was happy that as an athlete back then, I had the ability to do that. I think that
Yep.
it's so important to be able to use that voice in that sense.
mhm.
I don't think I
Hmm.
will be able to get that kind of reach or attention now that I'm retired. So I'm happy I did it then,
Yeah.
or that I got the opportunity to do something in that sense. But yeah, but it changes you. It's one thing,
Yeah.
like I said, if somebody's an ambassador and does something remotely, and that's all fine and it's great. But I think that people that actually go on the ground to see these situations and actually spend a week with the people there, that's different and that changes
Mhm.
you as a
Yes.
as a person.
100%.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Mhm.
it does. Yeah, I resonate. And it's so cliche, but it's so true. Basketball and sports are the great connector. We talked about your work with Basketball is Life, but you see that same thing ring true that you can be in Chad or Guinea.
hmm
I've played in China, I've played in Togo, I played all around Europe. And as soon as we bring
hmm
a basketball out, it's like
For
instant
sure.
camaraderie or competition, a little trash talking, all the things. But yeah, it's just so beautiful and so humanizing as well. Yeah, love
Mhm.
that.
It is. It is.
So we have just a couple more questions before we get to the lightning round. But I wanted to ask you, when you look back on your playing career and your career more largely, which has been super successful, what advice would you give to your 13-year-old self?
Um, I think that's a tough question.
It's tough, I
And I
know.
like I like the question. Yeah, because there's a lot of things I could say. Probably the biggest or the most important thing would be to um, if I speak strictly basketball wise, to try to develop my skills better. And I thought I did a fairly good job as a young kid. I trained hard, but I think that I never fully realized the things that I could do additionally because I had to do them better at the later stage. And I think I lost some time during that 13, 14, 15 because as a tall kid, you, you know, you kind of start maybe relying too much on your physical ability, you know.
Mm,
Mhm.
And then later on you realize, okay, at 6'9", I'm probably not going to be able to play center, so I have to focus more on some things other than just standing around the basket and scoring because that was easy.
yeah.
But I think the most important life advice I would give is not to trust people so easily. Um,
Mm,
that's a big one because once you make it to a pro level or close to a pro level, there's people around you who not necessarily everybody has your best interest at heart,
yeah.
Mhm.
and it's very difficult to realize that as a teenager. But I think that if I could tell my 13-year-old self that, I would say, hey, keep your eyes open because you meet the people looking back now, like over and over again, who are trying to offer you advice or trying to offer you help, and they don't always have your best interest at heart.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
don't think there's an athlete out there that didn't get burned at least once trusting the
Yeah.
wrong person, whether
Yeah.
it was a big or small thing. So I think
Mm,
that's I think very important aspect of it. And these people can be close to you as well, not necessarily just
mm,
somebody you don't know. So it's
Yeah.
I think that's an important part, and I think that's something that, especially now with the NIL and those things coming in, I think
yeah.
the people around these young players are going to have to focus so much more on these things,
Yep.
in Europe,
Mhm.
including. Yeah.
Mm,
I think people generally learn as they get older, keep your circle small, and
Hmm.
it is like layers to your friendship and to the people that you surround
Yes.
yourself with, because you are the
Yes.
top 5 people you surround yourself with. Who do you want those to be? Who do you want to emulate? Whose characteristics and values and morals and skills do you want to absorb or become better at? And like I think they have to be, like you said, they're like NIL, being very unintentional about your circle,
Hmm.
because everybody wants to be a part of the latest hype, and people don't always you as an athlete doesn't don't always know how to engage with that or how to react to that. And like
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you're
Exactly.
naive, you want to trust people,
For sure. For
and
mhm.
sure.
not to sound jaded, but
Yeah.
It is true, and I think a part of it is to learn to say no. I think that
Yeah.
my biggest problem looking back was that I tried to make everybody around me happy, you know,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and it took away from me a lot of focus and a lot of energy. And I remember I was in the rookie transition program when I got into the NBA, and that was a part of the there was a topic we had about saying no to people and learn to
Yeah.
say no, you know. And I thought like for the first time like learn to say no, and then I couldn't at that time fully understand it. I think I was not mature enough and ready enough. Later on you kind of see exactly what they
Uh-huh.
meant by that when they
Yep.
try to teach you, because you think you were saying no, but looking back you're saying, man, how many people I let close to me or let in my
Yep.
life, and did that really help me grow as a player, as a person, right?
Mhm.
And I
Exactly.
think that's something that I wish I knew better as a young kid. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
great.
for sure.
That's
It's
great
hard because
advice.
everything you say yes to, for example, okay, I'm quite an extrovert, so I make
Bree's a
friends.
yes
It's
person.
great. Yeah, I'm a yes person in general. But sometimes I've learned that if I say yes to like 5 different coffee dates in the week they might be cool people, but it's just not where I want to be intentional with my time. I'm
Hmm.
actually saying no to other friendships that I want to build and so into.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yes.
kind of same concept in a different light, but it's important to be able to say no and to really
Mhm.
understand and respect, your time, and just being intentional with the life that you build and the people you
Mhm.
surround around
Yeah,
your circle.
and it doesn't have to be anything dramatic. In a sense that it's not
You don't
saying
have to be
no.
a jerk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But it's not also saying to say no to some big project or some opportunities. It's also about the time. Brianna, I think you mentioned a really important thing here, which is time. As an athlete, especially, like time is extremely valuable, and
Yes.
saying no to people around you, and teaching them to understand that saying no doesn't mean you're trying to hurt somebody's feelings. It's about, hey, I need time for myself to prepare for practice, game, travel, whatever it is.
Yep.
And I think that that's a really important aspect of being an athlete, especially young athlete, that I think sometimes gets overlooked.
Yep.
I think that kind of leads us into our final question that we like to close out the main piece of the podcast. Is we always like to end our podcast with a question there of you giving advice to our listeners regarding achieving their full potential and using their giftings to share love and light to make the world a better place. Do you have any specific piece of advices for our listeners?
I'll go by what I tell kids at our basketball camp, and I think it's the same for kids or for teenagers or for adults. And I always say the same thing: find your passion.
Mm.
To me, that's so important. Because we can talk about work hard or be focused or stay motivated, but if you don't actually work towards your passion or you don't know what your passion is, I think you're not even starting. So
Yeah.
the biggest advice that I give to kids also at my basketball camp, and I think it relates also to later stage of life, is find your passion. Because we have kids in our camp that are, we have 300 kids in our camp, for example, and I'm convinced, I know that not all 300 kids want to be a basketball player. I'm sure there's kids that want to do something else, but they're there because their friend is there. They're there because the parents told them to go. They're there
Yeah.
because their summer has been boring, whatever, right? So find your passion. I think is so important. I think it relates to the later stage in life. Like, find whatever drives you, because if you do that, and I can speak that really from experience, whether it was basketball or what I do now, if you find the passion, everything else it's easy. The motivation is there. Hard work, it kind of feels like it's almost automatic.
Mm.
It's easier to put together your schedule and your timelines and everything because you're enjoying doing that. Unlike something that is not your passion, and I'm sure all of us have things like that in life as well. It's so difficult to dedicate your time and your focus
Yeah.
to those things. So that's my biggest thing. Like find your passion, because everybody has something, and I think it's worth looking really deep into yourself and trying to find
Mm, that's
Love
great.
that. Powerful words. We can drop the mic.
that.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah,
Thank you for
that,
sharing
that's what
that.
gray hair brings. Some of those powerful
Brings
words.
you wisdom.
No,
There you go. There
truly,
you
it's so important. It's so
go.
good. Really, this whole conversation has been a TED Talk and super motivating. I know I feel fired up and excited to kind of chase the things that I have for this week and some new ventures. So, yeah, thank you for your words. With that said,
Sure.
that takes us into our lightning round.
Woo!
So, we
Let's
have 4
go.
questions for you, nice and quick, 30-second response each. It's kind of like a soft rule. So, if you go a little longer, that's fine.
Okay.
But yeah, are you ready?
Let's go.
All right, cool. First question. What was your most memorable game you've played in? This could be NBA, EuroLeague, really whatever.
I will say it's probably I will say games I had in Slovenia with the national team, or just, yeah, Slovenian national team games. I wouldn't focus on one game, but I think playing for my national team was probably the most memorable because it has the biggest meaning, I would say.
Mm,
But I wouldn't single out one specific game, if that's okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
fair.
good. All right, second question. What's the most unique setting you've played a game in?
um, I played in a lot of unique settings, to be honest, in some big empty arenas or some small, crazy crowded arenas. But
Yeah.
Nobody
I,
throwing
I
glass
yeah,
bottles and fire at you?
exactly. I got hit with a coin. I got hit with a cup
No,
of beer when I was,
a
yeah, all that
coin.
happened. But a coin. But it's gonna sound kind of odd, but I would still say my favorite place to play is Madison Square Garden. I can't, it's
Mm,
not strange. I'd say normal in a way, but yeah, that's my favorite setting, and nothing comes close to that, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's a shooter's gym, yeah?
It is. It
You're a
is. Yeah,
shooter,
it
so,
is.
you know.
Yeah, loved it. Loved it. Yeah.
We love that. Next question. When you were playing, what was your pregame routine? Also, did you have any specific type of like hype music that was your go-to? Or even now you're grinding, you're trying to get work done. Like, what's that hype music for you?
As far as music, like I was always drawn more towards like alternative rock. I think that was kind
Okay.
of my thing. Even though I
Amen.
listened to all kinds of music, but that was maybe Pearl Jam and things like that were probably the
Nice.
the most I listened. But yeah, as far as routine goes, like when we had evening games, I would do short naps in the afternoon. That was a must. Like
Yep.
an hour long
Classic.
nap.
Hmm.
Yeah, right. And I could always fall asleep, which was great. Um, and then I don't think if I ever had a specific routine like that, but I remember like before games, I would always take a moment to remember all the hard work that I put in. That was always like
Mm.
a thing. Usually when in NBA games or national team games where there was like anthems playing and stuff, I would take a moment and then remember the hard work I put in to be there and the
Yeah.
opportunity that the game gives you, kind of to
Mm.
just not hype myself up, but to kind of open my eyes to the reality that I live in now, what was done
Mm.
before and what this moment means. So that was basically the routine. I didn't have kind of
Yeah.
like left shoe first, right shoe after, all these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. No
It was
super
more mental
systems.
yeah, it was more mental than anything else, to be honest.
Yeah.
More the mental preparation. Yeah.
Mm.
I love the appreciation of the present.
Yeah.
All right. Final question. Who is the GOAT, European basketball player of all time?
Um, for me, it's still Dražen Petrovic. I mean, he's legendary player. Played for the Nets as well, and that's why for me, when I played for the Nets, it was incredibly humbling at the same time,
Yeah.
and so special to play in the same gym as he did. So I would say Dražen Petrovic because he's still the GOAT. He's still the legend. He's one of the first players from Europe that showed that Europeans can play in the NBA. He opened the doors for so many of us, and yeah, I think none of us in Europe, or more specifically in the former Yugoslavia, will forget the day that he passed away, the tragic car accident he had, and dying at such a young age.
Mm.
So he became a legend instantly, and he's still the GOAT. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Well, that brings us to the end of our time. And yeah, just want to say thank you so much. It has been an incredible conversation. For our listeners out there, we're going to link all of Bostjan's social media profiles, um, link to his website, and all those things will be in the show notes. So you can follow along his journey as well. But yeah, thank you again for your time. It's been great.
Oh, thanks for having me. This has been a pleasure and a super fun conversation. And yeah, I'm really a fan of the podcast. You guys are doing an amazing job. I check out the clips, and sometimes the good thing is it draws me into the listening to the other parts of the conversation as well. I think you guys are doing an amazing job. So keep it up.
Thank you.